Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the statewide call. I'm Genaro Bogarin. I'm a member of the steering committee of the California Alliance for Community Energy. Please be aware that we plan to publish today's talk. I'll introduce our speaker in just a moment after reading our new vision statement. The California Alliance for Community Energy envisions a community-based and democratized energy system which promotes affordable, resilient, local renewable energy resources, prioritizing low-income communities that have been historically suffered inequitable access to essentials such as affordable energy and a healthy community. Thank you for joining us this month. This month's statewide call will explore the current policy landscape shaping community energy and distributed energy in California, focusing on how pending legislation can empower communities to address rising energy costs, grid reliability challenges, and climate impacts. It will highlight priority bills, emerging themes in both California and across the United States, and outline potential pathways to democratize energy systems and build the grid of the future. Our presenter today is Zoe Bennett. Zoe is a senior policy analyst for Reimagine Power, a San Francisco-based boutique consulting firm specializing in microgrid policy and project development. She leads legislative and regulatory tracking for a diverse coalition of clients and provides detailed analysis of distributed energy policy developments across California and the broader Western United States. This time, Zoe, welcome. I'll hand it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Carrie
Thank
away.
Great. Okay, thanks so much for having me, everyone. Good afternoon. Again, Zoe Bennett, Senior Policy Analyst with Reimagine Power. Before we kick off today's session, too, I'd just like to mention I know there's been a lot of discussion about the governor's race, and I would really love to hear everybody's thoughts. So I've kind of trimmed this down a little bit. I'm not going to go as fast as I was planning to, but we'll still have plenty of time for discussion at the end. So just to kick us off, I'd like to just level set with everyone on some of our key energy objectives in 2026. So these are just six high-level objectives that need to be considered for developing fair and effective energy policy. Energy needs to be affordable. It's an issue that we're seeing front and center, not only in the legislation, but the current governor's race as well. We need reliability, resiliency, and of course, safety as wildfires continue to pose a huge risk to communities and the grid as a whole. And of course, California has several clean energy and reduced emissions targets as well that we need to be able to hit. So just to briefly touch on the legislative process here in California, I'm sure many of us are familiar with the Schoolhouse Rock, I'm Just a Bill. Unfortunately, in the interest of time, I'm not going to sing the song today. Thank you. However, this graphic here is from the Courage California Institute, and it details how a bill goes from initial introduction through the committee processes, appropriations, both the chambers, and eventually onto the governor's desk to be signed or vetoed. So some high-level bills that we're watching in California. 2026 is the second half of a two-year session, and these are just some of the bills that are addressing our overall policy objectives, specifically on affordability, resiliency, and modernizing the grid for clean and local resilient energy. Starting out with SB 868, this is Senator Wiener's Plug-and-Play Solar Act on promoting plug-in, also known as balcony solar. Balcony solar systems can be purchased online by consumers. They do not need to be installed professionally, and they're cheaper than traditional rooftop systems for residential customers. These systems are not as powerful as rooftop configurations, but they can still offer savings of up to 10 to 20% on monthly electricity bills, which can definitely add up here in California. The greatest benefit of this bill is creating energy autonomy for renters. I'm a renter here in San Francisco. I actually just moved. I have to blur my background because my office is still a bit of a disaster. But the greatest benefit is that if I had my own solar panels, my own balcony panels, I could have brought them with me to my new apartment. So this bill is really exciting from the standpoint of a renter as it allows me to participate in the transition to clean energy and increasing autonomy for Californians, especially renters, to participate in the solar transition is critical. Also here we have SB 1215, Senator Cortez's bill, which directs utilities to triple the number of EV chargers at multifamily properties between January 1st and December 31st of 2027. So this bill is really going to help expand access to EV charging sites for renters, helping to create more charging certainty and stability for adopters. Next, we have SB 913, Senator Becker's Clean Local Power Act. This allows for DERs like batteries and smart home thermostats to qualify for resource adequacy, which helps level the playing field for DERs to be counted for the role that they're already playing in strengthening our grid and helping to avoid costly grid upgrades. SB 875 is Senator Wiener's bill on eminent domain. This bill would effectively carve out a pathway for cities, specifically San Francisco, to purchase distribution wires from PG&E and essentially secede from the utility to form an alternative power provider, such as a municipal utility. There's a lot more to be said about this bill. I'd love to hear thoughts from the group, time permitting. So this I do want to linger on for a moment. Both of these bills here were drafted to address CPUC Section 218, which is also known as the over-the-fence rule. This rule states that any entity sharing electricity across more than two contiguous parcels or a public street has to be considered a public utility. This is pretty much the largest barrier that we're facing to DERs at this stage. This is a huge issue. A lot of legislators are trying to come up with creative workarounds. This was one of them. AB 2175, which was heard in committee on consent yesterday. This bill was originally drafted to address the over-the-fence rule as well as to allow for submetering, which would open the door for DER development in multi-meter cases, such as multifamily residential properties. Unfortunately, this bill has been amended in the Assembly Committee, so it no longer directly addresses these barriers, but Assemblymember Garcia has signaled that he really wants to be a champion for microgrids, so we're still requesting support on this bill in order to stand with the Assembly member. I'd also like to give just an honorable mention to AB 2239, Assemblymember Carrillo's bill. This was another attempt to circumnavigate the over-the-fence barrier by authorizing the sharing of electricity in infrastructure-constrained zones. However, this bill was not set for hearing, and so it's effectively dead. All bills need to be heard in committee by tomorrow is the deadline. So there's no hearing, so this one has died, unfortunately. Looking beyond California, we have seen growth for community energy policy in other states. Most notably, I'd like to shout out Oregon, which has become kind of a shining star for community energy, specifically for microgrids, with the passage of these bills, HB 2065 and HB 2066. Last year, we worked with Sustainable Northwest and a coalition of supporters to pass these bills. They allow for third-party consultants to conduct microgrid interconnection studies and direct the Oregon PUC to establish a regulatory framework so that communities can develop their own microgrids. This regulatory proceeding is still underway. It's been split into these four concurrent work streams, and we are still in the informal rulemaking stage, and the proceeding is scheduled to continue through March of 2027. In Ohio, we have HB 303, which has made it through the House. It's currently in Senate committee. This bill establishes a community energy pilot program to approve 1,500 megawatts of community energy projects. Projects approved by the program have to be 10 megawatts or less, and they're directed towards attracting private investment in communities across the state, specifically focusing on residential customers. This map here on the right, this is from Cannery Media, and it shows the most dominant theme in clean local energy across the US this year, which is balcony solar. We have it here in California with SB 868. It's already been passed in Utah, in Maine, and it's passing through both chambers in Colorado, Virginia, and Maryland. And the popularity of balcony solar in legislation this year is primarily a buying signal. It's relatively a small lift politically, but it's a broad demonstration of support for local and democratized energy systems. So looking to the future, we are seeing a huge rise in interest in consumer-driven local energy solutions in both California and beyond the greater United States. It's signaled in part by the rise in balcony solar and also growing interest in community solar programs. And California is really a leader in this space. We have been, and we need to continue to represent the model of what modern energy policy can look like. We are at a crossroads with the incoming new governor, and we really need to ensure that they understand the barriers and the pathways through to a democratized energy solution. So, what do some of these pathways look like? These are all pretty important. We need updated compensation mechanisms for utilities that help prioritize performance over infrastructure build out, like Stern's bill last year on performance-based regulation. We need to create regulatory frameworks that allow the development of DERs and microgrids in order to reflect these benefits, including removing barriers like the over-the-fence rule. And we need less reliance and investment in grant programs and subsidies alone. In California, we are unfortunately going through seeing how destabilizing these programs can be when funding is cut, like in the case of DEBA and DSGS. And instead, we need tariffs and price signals based on efficiency and reliability. We also need effective compensation mechanisms, encouraging adoption and disincentivizing complete grid defection. Half the benefit of these resources is their support for the greater grid. And ultimately, we want a clear path for communities everywhere to customize and replicate their own energy systems to fit their individual needs. So I hope this presentation can be a good starting point for the rest of today's discussion. While legislative members have been working on creative solutions to get around some of these systemic barriers blocking community energy development, we have the opportunity to knock these barriers down completely with the support of a friendly governor, friendly CPUC. I'd love to take questions on specifics. I know I've kind of flown through.
Thank you for watching this presentation from the California Alliance for Community Energy. This concludes the published portion of our monthly call. If you would like to participate in our monthly calls, including Q&A, please consider joining the California Alliance for Community Energy. For more information, you can see our website at cacommunityenergy.org/apply.